The Silent Invasion. Dr. Elena Rossi squinted at the monitor, her brow furrowed in concentration. The radio telescope's data stream showed an anomaly she couldn't explain. A faint, but persistent signal at the edge of the solar system. She'd been staring at it for hours, running algorithm after algorithm, trying to make sense of it. "Hey, Josh," she called out to her research assistant. "Come take a look at this." Joshua Chen, a lanky postgrad with perpetually disheveled hair, ambled over. "What's up, Doc?" he quipped, earning an eye roll from Elena. "This signal," she pointed at the screen. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's not a pulsar, not a quasar, and definitely not a satellite or space junk." Josh leaned in, his eyes widening as he processed the data. "It's moving," he whispered. "But that's impossible, right? I mean, at that distance, for us to detect movement, it would have to be massive," Elena finished, "or incredibly advanced." The two scientists exchanged a look, both afraid to voice the thought that hung in the air between them. After a moment, Elena shook her head and chuckled nervously. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need more data before we jump to any crazy conclusions. Run a full spectrum analysis, and let's see if we can isolate any patterns." As Josh set to work, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something monumental. Little did she know, her hunch was more accurate than she could have possibly imagined. Light years away, aboard the Xenarch's research vessel Exclith, lead scientist Wheatley clicked her mandibles in excitement. The holographic display before her showed a blue and green planet, teeming with life. "Fascinating," she chittered to her fellow researchers. "This world appears to be at the perfect stage of development. Complex life forms, but no sign of interstellar travel capabilities." Her second-in-command, Ensbik, moved closer to the display. "The dominant species appears to be bipedal. Primitive exoskeletons. Only 2 eyes. How do they even function?" Wheatley waved a clawed appendage dismissively. "Remember the Galactic Scientific Council's primary directive. Appearance does not dictate intelligence. We must observe and analyze before drawing conclusions." She turned to the ship's navigator. "Engage full cloaking protocols. Take us into low orbit. We'll begin our detailed observations immediately." The massive Xenarch ship, a structure that would dwarf the largest human space stations, glided silently into Earth's orbit. Its advanced cloaking technology rendered it invisible not only to the naked eye, but to all known forms of human detection systems. Back on Earth, in the bustling heart of New York City, Sarah Martinez hurried down the crowded sidewalk, her phone pressed to her ear. "I'm telling you, Mom, it's not just tinnitus," she insisted, raising her voice to be heard over the cacophony of the city. "I've been hearing this. I don't know, this high-pitched hum for days now. It's driving me crazy." She paused at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. "No, it's not just me. There's a whole Reddit thread about it. People all over the city are experiencing the same thing." As Sarah crossed the street, she was oblivious to the invisible Xenarch scout ship hovering silently above the skyscrapers, its sensors focused intently on the throngs of humans below. Inside the scout ship, junior researcher Klovax was growing increasingly frustrated. "I don't understand," he buzzed to his superior. "How are they communicating? I see their mouthparts moving, but I'm not detecting any chemical signatures or visual patterns." Senior researcher Enstpai clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "It's possible they're using some form of vibration to communicate. But if that's the case, their sensitivity must be incredibly acute. We're not detecting anything in ranges that would be useful for communication." Klovax adjusted the sensors, pushing them to their limits. "Wait, there's something. It's faint, but there's definitely a pattern of atmospheric disturbances around their head regions when they're engaging in what appears to be communication." Ms. Hitby's compound eyes glittered with excitement. "Excellent work, Klovax. We need to report this to lead scientist Wheatley immediately. This could be a significant breakthrough in understanding these creatures." As the Xenerks excitedly discussed their findings, their human subjects continued about their daily lives, blissfully unaware of the alien observers. In a small apartment in Brooklyn, Alex Cho sat at his computer, scrolling through the same Reddit thread Sarah had mentioned earlier. Weird humming sound in NYC, he read aloud. Hundreds report strange, high-pitched noise. Aliens. Government experiment. 5G conspiracy. Alex snorted and was about to close the tab when a notification popped up. It was an email from his old college roommate, now working at NASA. "Hey Alex," it read. "Remember that weird signal I told you about last week? The one at the edge of the solar system? Well, you're not going to believe this, but it's gone. Vanished. Like it was never there. And now we're picking up some strange atmospheric disturbances in low Earth orbit. It's probably nothing, but I don't know, man. Something feels off. Keep an eye out for anything unusual, will you?" Alex leaned back in his chair, a chill running down his spine despite the warm summer evening. He glanced out his window at the New York skyline, wondering if the strange hum and the vanishing signal could possibly be connected. High above the city, the Xenerks continued their observations, their excitement growing with each passing hour. They watched humans go about their daily routines, marveling at their resilience in such a chaotic environment. "Look at how they navigate their dense habitats," Wheatley noted. "They're constantly bombarded with stimuli, yet they seem to filter and prioritize information effortlessly." Ansbach nodded in agreement. "And their reaction times are impressive. They're anticipating events before they occur." "But how?" As if in answer to his question, a car backfired on the street below. The Xenerks watched in amazement as humans in the vicinity flinched and turned toward the sound, long before any visual cue was apparent. "Incredible," Wheatley breathed. "Their vibration detection organs must be incredibly sophisticated. We need to study this further." She turned to her team, her antennae quivering with excitement. "Prepare for the next phase of our mission. We need closer observations. Select subjects from various demographics for detailed study. Remember, absolute stealth is crucial. We cannot risk alerting them to our presence." As the Xenerks prepared for their more invasive research, the humans below remained oblivious to the monumental first contact taking place right above their heads. The stage was set for a collision of worlds, one that would challenge both species' understanding of the universe and their place in it. In her lab, Dr. Elena Rossi was still poring over data, trying to make sense of the vanished signal. In New York, Sarah Martinez was scheduling an appointment with an audiologist, while Alex Cho was deep in an internet rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. And high above them all, the Xenerks were about to embark on a journey of discovery that would change the course of galactic history. The silent invasion had begun, and Earth would never be the same. The cacophony incident. Junior researcher Klovax buzzed with nervous energy as he prepared for his first solo mission to the surface. The Xenerk ship had been orbiting Earth for weeks now, gathering data from afar, but lead scientist Wheatley had decided it was time for closer observations. "Remember," Wheatley chittered, her compound eyes fixed on Klovax, "absolute stealth is paramount. Your personal cloaking device will render you invisible to their primitive visual detection, but be cautious of physical contact." Klovax nodded, his antennae twitching with excitement. "I understand, lead scientist. I won't let you down." As Klovax's scout ship descended towards New York City, he marveled at the towering structures below. The Xenerks were an advanced race, but they had long ago moved past the need for such vertical habitats. There was something both primitive and awe-inspiring about the human cityscape. The scout ship settled on the roof of a skyscraper, its advanced technology ensuring a silent landing. Klovax activated his personal cloaking device and scuttled towards the roof access door. Sarah Martinez rubbed her temples as she rode the elevator up to her office on the 47th floor. The mysterious humming sound that had plagued her for weeks seemed to be getting worse. The audiologist had found nothing wrong with her hearing, suggesting it might be stress-related. "Yeah, right," Sarah muttered as the elevator dinged and the doors slid open. Because imaginary sounds are so much better than actual hearing loss. As she walked to her desk, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt different somehow, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. Klovax moved cautiously through the human habitat, his sensors working overtime to process the overwhelming amount of data. The cacophony of sounds, the multitude of visual stimuli, the complex cocktail of chemicals in the air. It was almost too much for his Xenerk's nervous system to handle. He paused near a cluster of humans, focusing his attention on their communication. His translation matrix was still struggling to decipher their language, but he was fascinated by the way they seemed to anticipate each other's vocalizations, responding to subtle cues he could barely detect. In his fascination, Klovax failed to notice a human approaching rapidly from behind. The collision was brief, just a momentary brush of shoulders, but it was enough to startle the young researcher. In his panic, he instinctively activated his defense mechanism. Sarah was just settling into her chair when it happened. One moment, the office was filled with the usual Monday morning chatter and the hum of computers. The next, an ear-splitting, high-pitched whine filled the air. The effect was instantaneous and chaotic. Everyone in the office clapped their hands over their ears, faces contorted in pain. Computer screens cracked, light bulbs shattered, and the windows vibrated ominously. Sarah fell to her knees, the pain in her head overwhelming. Through tear-filled eyes, she saw her coworkers in similar states of distress. Some were screaming, but she couldn't hear them over the terrible noise. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Klovax was in a panic. He had only activated his defense mechanism for a fraction of a second, but the result was catastrophic. The humans were in clear distress, and the habitat had suffered significant damage. Exocliff Base, this is Klovax. He chittered urgently into his communicator. Request immediate extraction. The mission has been compromised. As the humans began to recover, Klovax scuttled towards the roof access, his mind racing. How could they have reacted to a frequency that was supposed to be beyond their perceptual range? Across the city, similar scenes of chaos were unfolding. The Xenerk's defense mechanism's frequency had propagated through the steel structures of the skyscrapers, affecting a large swath of Manhattan. In his Brooklyn apartment, Alex Cho was jolted awake by the sound. By the time he fumbled for his phone to record it, the noise had stopped, but his ears were ringing, and he felt disoriented. With shaking hands, he opened his laptop and navigated to the Reddit thread he'd been following. It was already exploding with activity. Did anyone else hear that? My windows almost shattered. I think my dog has gone deaf. Is this the alien invasion? Alex's blood ran cold as he remembered his NASA friend's warning. Could this really be connected to the strange signal they detected? Back at the Xenerk's mothership, Vikitli was furious. You activated your defense mechanism in the middle of a human habitat. She buzzed angrily at Klovax. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ensbik interrupted, his antennae quivering with excitement. Lead scientist, while junior researcher Klovax's actions were reckless, they provided us with invaluable data. The humans reacted to a frequency that should have been imperceptible to them. Their auditory capabilities far exceed our initial estimates. Vikitli's compound eyes flickered as she processed this information. This complicates things. We need to reassess our entire approach. Ensbik, compile all the data we've gathered on human auditory responses. Klovax, you're confined to the ship until further notice. As the Xenerk scrambled to understand the implications of their discovery, Earth was buzzing with confusion and fear. Dr. Elena Rossi was inundated with calls from her colleagues around the world. Reports were coming in of a global event, a high-pitched sound that had affected major cities on every continent simultaneously. It has to be artificial in origin, her colleague from Tokyo was saying. The frequency and duration were too precise to be natural. Elena's mind was racing. Could this be connected to the strange signal they detected at the edge of the solar system? She needed more data. In the days following what the media had dubbed the cacophony incident, the world was on edge. Conspiracy theories ran wild, ranging from secret government weapons tests to alien invasions. Sarah Martinez found herself at the center of a media storm. As one of the people closest to the epicenter of the event, she was interviewed by countless news outlets. It was like nothing I've ever experienced, she told a CNN reporter. It wasn't just loud, it was painful, like it was inside my head. Alex Cho had gone from casual Reddit conspiracy browser to full-blown investigator. He'd connected with others online who had reported strange phenomena in the weeks leading up to the incident. Unexplained humming sounds, electronic disturbances, even claimed sightings of shimmer in the air. Meanwhile, world governments were scrambling to understand and respond to the event. Military forces were on high alert, and scientific institutions were working around the clock to analyze data from the incident. Aboard the Exoclith, Gitley and her team were working feverishly to understand the full extent of human auditory capabilities. Their earlier assumptions had been shattered, and they now realized they were dealing with a species far more advanced in some ways than they had initially believed. "We need to be more cautious," Gitley announced to her team. "These humans, with their incredible sensory capabilities, might be more aware of our presence than we thought. We must revise our observation protocols immediately." As both humans and Xnurks grappled with the aftermath of the cacophony incident, neither species fully understood how this event would catalyze a chain of discoveries that would change the course of both their civilizations forever. The silent invasion had become a cacophonous revelation, and the stage was set for an interstellar drama of unprecedented proportions. Unraveling the mystery, Dr. Elena Rossi hadn't slept properly in days. The cacophony incident had turned her world upside down, and she was at the forefront of the scientific community's efforts to understand what had happened. Her lab at the radio telescope facility had become a hub of frenzied activity, with researchers from various disciplines poring over data from around the globe. "Elena, you need to see this," Josh called out, his voice tight with excitement. He was hunched over a computer, analyzing atmospheric data from the day of the incident. Elena hurried over, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. "What have you found?" Josh pointed at the screen. "Look at these readings." Just before the sound event, there was a brief but significant disturbance in the upper atmosphere. It's almost like something entered our atmosphere at high speed, but without any of the usual signs of re-entry. Elena's mind raced. Could it be related to that anomaly we detected at the edge of the solar system? Before Josh could respond, Elena's phone buzzed. It was a message from her colleague at NASA. "Turn on the news. Now." Across the city, Sarah Martinez was also glued to her television. The news anchor's voice was grave as he reported the latest development. In a shocking turn of events, multiple witnesses around the world have reported seeing what they describe as shimmering figures in the aftermath of the cacophony incident. Experts are baffled by these sightings, which some claim could be evidence of an alien presence on Earth. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the strange feeling she'd had in the office just before the incident, the sense that something was off. Could it be possible? Her phone pinged with a notification. It was another message from that Reddit thread she'd been following. Someone had posted a blurry photo of what looked like a distortion in the air, vaguely resembling a tall, insect-like figure. Meanwhile, aboard the Exoclith, the Xnurks were in crisis mode. Gitley paced back and forth, her mandibles clicking in agitation. "Our cloaking technology is failing," Enzbik reported, his antennae drooping. "The high-frequency burst from Clovax's defense mechanism seems to have caused a cascading malfunction in our stealth systems." Gitley's compound eyes flickered in alarm. "Can it be repaired?" "Yes, but it will take time. And until then, we're exposed," Gitley finished grimly. "The humans may be able to detect us." Alex Cho had barely left his apartment in days. His walls were covered in printouts, witness accounts, scientific papers, and blurry photos of alleged alien sightings. He'd been connecting with people online, piecing together a timeline of strange occurrences leading up to the cacophony incident. A knock at his door startled him. He opened it to find Sarah Martinez standing there, looking nervous. "You're the one from the Reddit thread, right?" she asked. "The one collecting information about the incident." Alex nodded, ushering her inside. "Did you see something?" Sarah hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "I took this on my way home from work yesterday. I thought I was going crazy, but after seeing the news..." She showed Alex a photo. It was clearer than most he'd seen. A distinct shimmer in the air, with a vague outline that was decidedly not human. "We need to take this to someone," Alex said, his heart racing. "Someone who can analyze it properly." Dr. Rossi was in the middle of a heated debate with her colleagues when her assistant interrupted. "There are 2 people here to see you," he said. "They say they have photographic evidence of, well, they're claiming it's an alien." Elena was about to dismiss them as cranks when she caught sight of the photo on Sarah's phone. Her scientific mind began racing with possibilities. "We need to run this through every analysis we have," she said, her fatigue forgotten. "If this is genuine, it could change everything we think we know about the incident." As Elena's team began their analysis, Alex and Sarah shared everything they'd gathered. The timeline of strange occurrences, the patterns they'd noticed, the correlations with atmospheric disturbances. "It's like they've been here for weeks," Sarah said, "watching us. But something went wrong during the incident. Their technology malfunctioned somehow." Elena nodded, her mind putting the pieces together. The atmospheric disturbance, the high-frequency sound, the sightings, it all points to some kind of cloaking technology, advanced beyond anything we've ever encountered. Back on the exoclith, Gately had made a difficult decision. "We need to understand how much the humans know," she announced to her team. "Prepare a stealth probe. We're going to infiltrate one of their research facilities." Ensbik chittered nervously. "But Lid scientist, our cloaking technology is still unstable. We risk exposure." "We have no choice," Gately replied firmly. "If the humans are close to discovering us, we need to be prepared." As night fell, Elena's lab was a hive of activity. They'd made significant progress in analyzing the photo and correlating it with other data they'd gathered. Elena was just about to call for a break when all the equipment in the lab suddenly went haywire. Computers flickered, printers spewed out random pages, and the lights fluctuated wildly. And in the midst of the chaos, a shimmering figure appeared in the center of the room. For a moment, everyone froze. The figure solidified into a form that was undeniably alien, insectoid with multiple limbs and compound eyes. It seemed as startled as the humans, its antennae waving frantically. Elena was the first to recover. "Hello," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We've been wondering when you'd make contact." The alien, a Xenarch scout sent by Ketley, was caught completely off guard. Its mission had been to observe undetected, but the malfunctioning cloaking device had fully deactivated at the worst possible moment. In the tense silence that followed, both species stood on the precipice of a new era. The mystery was unraveling, but the real challenges were just beginning. As word of the encounter spread, the world held its breath. Governments scrambled to formulate responses, religious leaders grappled with the theological implications, and ordinary citizens tried to come to terms with the reality that humanity was not alone in the universe. For Elena, Alex, and Sarah, the revelation brought a mix of vindication and trepidation. They had been at the forefront of unraveling the mystery, but now they found themselves thrust into the role of impromptu ambassadors, trying to bridge the gap between 2 vastly different species. The Xenarchs, for their part, were forced to rapidly reassess their entire mission. What had started as a covert scientific study had turned into a full-blown first contact scenario, with all the diplomatic complexities that entailed. As dawn broke on a new day, humanity awakened to a changed world. The mystery of the cacophony incident had been solved, but it had opened the door to a universe of new questions. How would humanity and the Xenerks move forward from this point? What other secrets of the cosmos were waiting to be discovered? The next phase of the adventure was just beginning, and it promised to be beyond anything either humans or Xenerks had ever imagined. The hunter becomes the hunted. The world had changed overnight. The revelation of the Xenerks' presence on Earth had sent shockwaves through every level of human society. Governments scrambled to establish protocols for interspecies interaction, while the public vacillated between fear, excitement, and disbelief. For the Xenerks, the situation had become increasingly precarious. Their carefully planned scientific mission had unraveled spectacularly, leaving them exposed and vulnerable on an alien world. Aboard the Exoclith, Gately faced the most challenging decision of her career. "We need more information," she chittered to her assembled team. "Our mission parameters have shifted. We must understand the full extent of human capabilities if we're to navigate this crisis." Innsvik, ever the voice of caution, raised an appendage. "Lid scientist, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. The risks of further exposure are outweighed by the potential benefits of this unprecedented opportunity," Gately interrupted. "Prepare a team for a targeted information-gathering mission. We need to obtain human subjects for detailed study." As the Xenerks prepared for their daring mission, they were unaware that they too were being watched. Dr. Elena Rossi hadn't left her lab in days. The brief encounter with the Xenark scout had provided a wealth of data, but it had also raised countless new questions. She and her team worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of information they could gather. Dr. Rossi called out one of her assistants. "I think I've found something." Elena hurried over to the young researcher's station. On the screen was a complex pattern of atmospheric disturbances. "It's similar to the readings we got just before the cacophony incident," the assistant explained. "But this time, it's more localized. And look at the frequency." Elena's eyes widened as she processed the implications. "They're planning something. We need to alert the authorities immediately." Across town, Sarah Martinez was trying to come to terms with her new reality. Her encounter with the alien had thrust her into the spotlight, and she found herself constantly hounded by press and government agents alike. As she hurried down the street, pulling her hood low to avoid recognition, a strange sensation washed over her. The hum that had plagued her for weeks suddenly intensified, becoming almost painful in its clarity. Sarah stumbled, her vision blurring. As she reached out to steady herself against a wall, a shimmering figure materialized before her. Before she could cry out, everything went black. Alex Cho was in the middle of a heated online discussion about the alien presence when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Elena. "Possible alien activity detected. Sarah's not answering her phone. Can you check on her?" A sense of dread settled in Alex's stomach as he grabbed his jacket and rushed out the door. By the time he reached Sarah's apartment, his worst fears were confirmed. The door was ajar, and inside, signs of a struggle were evident. "Oh God," Alex muttered, his hand shaking as he dialed Elena's number. "They've taken her." Deep within the Exoclith, Sarah Martinez slowly regained consciousness. Her head throbbed, and her vision swam as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. The air felt thick and humid, filled with unfamiliar scents. Strange, chittering sounds echoed around her. As her eyes finally focused, Sarah found herself face to face with Kipley. The Xenark scientist's compound eyes studied her intently, while various appendages manipulated unfamiliar instruments. "Fascinating," Gately chittered to her team. "Her auditory response to our presence is remarkably acute. Begin the detailed scans of her cranial structure." Sarah tried to speak, to protest, but found herself unable to move. Fear and anger warred within her as she realized the full extent of her situation. She was no longer just a witness to history. She had become a subject of alien experimentation. The news of Sarah's abduction spread quickly through the hastily assembled human-alien response team. Elena and Alex found themselves working alongside military personnel and government agents, all racing against time to locate and rescue Sarah. "We've been analyzing the atmospheric disturbances," Elena explained to the assembled team. "We believe we can use them to track the alien ship's movements." A gruff military officer nodded. "Good, because we've got reports coming in of similar abductions across the globe. Whatever these aliens are planning, it's big." As the team worked feverishly to pinpoint the exoclith's location, Alex couldn't shake a nagging thought. "Dr. Rossi," he said, pulling Elena aside, "what if we're thinking about this all wrong? What if there's a way to use their own technology against them?" Elena's eyes lit up as she grasped Alex's idea. "The frequency from the cacophony incident, if we could replicate it, amplify it. We could disrupt their cloaking technology," Alex finished. "Maybe even their whole ship." With renewed purpose, the team set to work, racing against time to develop a weapon that could turn the tables on the alien invaders. Aboard the exoclith, Gately was becoming increasingly agitated. The human subjects they had gathered were proving to be far more resilient and troublesome than anticipated. "Their auditory capabilities are beyond anything we imagined," she reported to her superiors back on the Xenarch's homeworld. "And there's something else, an unexpected resistance to our neural probes. We need more time to." Her report was cut short by a blaring alarm. Vic burst into the lab, his antennae quivering in distress. "Lid scientist, we've been discovered. Human aircraft are approaching rapidly, and our cloaking systems are fluctuating." Gately's mind raced. How had the humans managed to track them? And more importantly, how were they interfering with Xenarch's technology? As the ship shuddered under the first wave of human assault, Gately made a decision that would change the course of both species' history. "Prepare for emergency protocols," she ordered, "and release the human subjects." On the ground, Elena, Alex, and the rest of the response team watched in awe as their hastily constructed sonic weapon took effect. The shimmering outline of an enormous spacecraft flickered into view above the city. "It's working," Alex shouted over the deafening hum of their device. "Their cloaking is failing." But their victory was short-lived. As military aircraft converged on the now visible exoclith, the alien ship suddenly released dozens of small, pod-like structures. They fell to Earth like seeds from a dandelion, each containing a disoriented but very much alive human abductee. In the chaos that followed, as rescue teams scrambled to retrieve the released captives, the exoclith made its move. With a burst of energy that overloaded every electronic device for miles, the alien ship shot upward, vanishing into the upper atmosphere. In the aftermath of the Xenarch's retreat, Sarah found herself at the center of a whirlwind of debriefings and medical examinations. Despite her ordeal, she felt a strange sense of exhilaration. "You don't understand," she tried to explain to Elena and Alex as they visited her in the hospital. "What I saw up there, what I learned, it changes everything. We're not alone, and we're not helpless. We fought back." Elena nodded, her scientist's mind already racing with the possibilities. "And in doing so, we proved ourselves to be far more formidable than they expected." The hunter became the hunted. As the three friends contemplated the implications of recent events, they knew that this was far from over. The Xenarchs had retreated, but they hadn't gone far. Humanity had won this battle, but the war for their place in the cosmic order was just beginning. And somewhere in the vastness of space, Gately and her team were reaching the same conclusion. Their mission had failed, but in that failure lay the seeds of a far greater discovery. Humanity was not just a subject to be studied. They were potential rivals, or perhaps, someday, allies. The game had changed, and the next move would determine the fate of both species. Symphony of diplomacy. The weeks following the Xenarch's retreat were a whirlwind of global activity. Humanity, once divided by borders and ideologies, found itself united in the face of an extraterrestrial presence. The United Nations convened an emergency session, establishing the Interspecies Contact Committee, ICC, to coordinate humanity's response to the alien encounter. Dr. Elena Rossi, recognized for her pivotal role in unraveling the Xenarch's mystery, was appointed as the ICC's chief scientific advisor. Sarah Martinez, with her unique first-hand experience aboard the Exoclith, became a key consultant. Alex Cho, whose unconventional thinking had helped turn the tide against the aliens, was brought on as a strategic analyst. As the ICC worked tirelessly to prepare for potential future contact, the Xenarchs were engaged in their own heated debates light years away. Aboard the Exoclith, now orbiting a distant moon in the solar system, Kittley faced the Xenarch's High Council via holographic transmission. "Esteemed Council," she chittered, her antennae twitching nervously. "While our initial mission parameters were compromised, the data we've gathered on the humans is unprecedented. Their auditory capabilities and technological adaptability far exceed our initial estimates. I propose we initiate diplomatic contact." The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of clicks and buzzes. Elder Tsikri, his exoskeleton showing signs of age, raised an appendage for silence. Lead scientist Kittley, he intoned gravely, "Your unauthorized abduction of human subjects has jeopardized our entire research initiative. The humans now view us as hostile entities. How do you propose we overcome this?" Kittley's compound eyes flickered with determination. "Through the very thing that makes them unique: sound." Back on Earth, Elena was burning the midnight oil in her lab when an urgent call came through. It was from the deep space monitoring station she'd once worked at. "Dr. Rossi," the breathless voice on the other end said, "we're picking up a signal. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Elena's heart raced as she processed the information. "Send me the data immediately, and alert the ICC. We may have first contact." Within hours, the ICC war room was abuzz with activity. Scientists, military personnel, and diplomats from around the world huddled around screens, analyzing the alien transmission. "It's not just a signal," Elena explained, her voice filled with awe. "It's music. Complex, multilayered, utterly alien, but undeniably music." Sarah, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "I recognize some of these tones. I heard them on the Exoclith. This is a Xenarch's composition." Alex, always quick to think outside the box, grinned. "They're extending an olive branch, or should I say, a musical note." The ICC chairman, a stern-faced diplomat, frowned. "That's all well and good, but how do we respond? We can't just send them a top 40 playlist and hope for the best." Elena's eyes lit up with an idea. "No, but we can do one better. We can compose a response, a symphony of our own, one that showcases the breadth of human musical tradition and our willingness to harmonize with new ideas." The chairman nodded slowly. "Make it happen, Dr. Rossi. The fate of interspecies diplomacy may rest on this musical exchange." Over the next few days, Elena, Sarah, and Alex worked tirelessly with a team of Earth's most brilliant composers, musicians, and sound engineers. They analyzed the Xenarch's composition, identifying patterns and themes, and wove them into a grand symphony that incorporated elements from cultures around the world. As the final notes were being fine-tuned, Sarah approached Elena with a nervous expression. "There's something missing," she said. "Something I experienced on the Exoclith. Their music, it wasn't just sound. It was felt. Vibrations that resonated through their entire bodies." Elena pondered this for a moment before breaking into a wide smile. "Of course, we're not just composing for the ears, but for the whole body. Alex, call in the sound engineers. We're going to need some serious subwoofers." The day of the transmission arrived. The world held its breath as the ICC prepared to broadcast humanity's musical response to the stars. Massive speakers had been set up around the globe, ready to not just play the symphony, but to let every human feel it in their bones. As the countdown reached 0, Elena gave the signal. The symphony began softly, a gentle melody that spoke of Earth's natural beauty. It swelled into a complex interplay of cultural themes, the rhythms of African drums, The haunting tones of Chinese flutes, the majestic swells of European orchestras, woven throughout were alien tones inspired by the Xenarch's transmission, a musical acknowledgement of their presence and an invitation to harmony. As the music reached its crescendo, the ground itself seemed to vibrate. Infrasound frequencies, felt rather than heard, resonated through the earth, carrying humanity's message to the stars. Aboard the Exoclith, Kitli and her team listened in stunned silence as the human response washed over them. Their sensitive bodies vibrated with the complex harmonies and deep, earth-shaking tones. "Remarkable," Ensbik chittered softly. "They've not only deciphered our musical language, but expanded upon it in ways we never imagined." Kitli's antennae quivered with emotion. This is more than just a response. It's an invitation, a demonstration of their willingness to meet us halfway. She turned to her communications officer. "Prepare a transmission to Earth. It's time we showed ourselves properly." As the final notes of Earth's symphony faded away, a tense silence fell over the ICC command center. Had their message been received? Understood. Would the Xenarchs respond? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. A holographic projection suddenly materialized in the center of the room, causing gasps and startled exclamations. There, in shimmering detail, stood Kitli and her team. "Greetings, people of Earth." Kitli's translated voice resonated through the room. "We are the Xenarchs. We come seeking knowledge and understanding. Your musical response has shown us that, despite our differences, we share a fundamental desire for harmony and cooperation." Alina stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you. We have much to learn from each other." As human and Xenarchs representatives began their first official dialogue, the tension in the room gradually gave way to an atmosphere of cautious optimism. There were still many challenges ahead, cultural misunderstandings to navigate, past wrongs to address, and a universe of differences to bridge. But in this moment, brought together by the universal language of music, both species felt the stirring of something profound, the beginning of a galactic symphony, with humanity and Xenarchs playing their unique parts in a greater cosmic harmony. Outside the ICC headquarters, crowds had gathered to witness history in the making. As news of the successful contact spread, cheers erupted around the world. Impromptu concerts sprang up in city squares, with humans and holographic Xenarchs joining in a celebratory cacophony that symbolized the dawn of a new era. The silent invasion had become a symphony of diplomacy, and the universe would never be the same.